Today coming up, mixing a full EDM track from start to finish without leaving anything out and showing you every little detail on how it's actually done. Hey guys, welcome to the studio. First up, really good news. My Stay song that was released last week, not even last week, like last Friday, and it already reached 12,000 plays. The last song that I released by the Noise Geeks on my label was already the best start of a release ever, and this is even better. So really excited and pumped, and thanks a lot for all of you playing that song. And I also passed episode 600. I completely forgot about it. So today's daily vlog, I don't know, 200 something of season 2. So I already had a full year, so it's over 600. Thanks a lot for tuning in for over 600 episodes. Although I doubt that there is anyone that really saw all of them. Anyways, let's get into today's main topic, which is mixing. As you know, I had like a small contest. You could send me, tweet me your songs, and I picked one that I will actually now mix for you, show you everything about it. It's a track by Callum Eddings. He is, I think, from Australia, and it's, yeah, I would just say it's a future bass song in like a format of 3 minutes, so pop future bass kind of sound. So really looking forward to it, and it's the first time I'm mixing on the new speakers. So if I mess up everything, I will just blame it on the new speakers. And as you know, mixing is something very subjective, and it really depends on your speakers and the room you're in and everything. But I will try to do my best. And what I always start with when I do or approach a new mix by someone else is, of course, like getting the stems from them, all of them, every single track in 24-bit as a WAV file. I then just drag it into Logic. I already did all of that. And I usually pull down all of the faders, either the entire way down or so that it just doesn't clip when all of the tracks are playing. And then it's all about like organizing everything. Because for example, this project, I got 78 tracks in total. So it's a project that I didn't make. I first have to organize myself. So finding out the BPM for this song is 138. And then grouping things up, putting the vocals next to each other, putting the basses, the sub-top bass next to each other, giving everything a color, and just like organizing this entire project so that I know where the things are to just work faster. Because if you start searching for everything, it will just take longer. Done with all of the boring stuff, but let me tell you, this is actually really important. You should do it on every single project. I do it on every project the same way. I have like the first block are the drums, and then I have all of the basses, and the basses I always mark red. So everything above it I know are drums. Everything below the basses that are colored red are melodies, pianos, chords, wobbles, everything that is an instrument. Then here this purple or pink or whatever color it is for vocals. And then the very last block is all of the effect sounds. So it's basically sorted kind of by frequencies, from the kick to the bass, to the middle frequency elements, to the top kind of stuff. On every track, the same this way. You can just open up an old project and immediately you know where the drums sit, where the bass is, the vocals, and can just dive into it and work on your project. You should really incorporate that into your production workflow. Since the project is so big, and to keep this video kind of easier to follow, I will just stick all of the mixing just to the drop part. It's the most important, it's the hardest to mix. Most of the elements are in there. I think mixing a break section where less things are going on is actually a whole lot easier. And so that you get a rough overview of the song, let me play you the rough mix of Callum Eddings, of the artist. That's the rough mix, not bad. The song is cool. The vocals, maybe not the strongest and not really my thing, but still a good solid track. The mixing is alright, but I still think there's a lot of potential to actually improve it. These rough mixes are important when you work for clients. If it's your own song, you won't need it. You know which element should go where. But for clients, I need the rough mix to just be able to double check if I'm getting what the artist wants to do. Because for example, I could hear a guitar and think it's more a sound that should be really in the background and just adding to the track. And the artist actually intended it as the main element. The rough mix lets me just double check it to have like, yeah, the reference and not just mix it entirely in another way the client intended. Your task mixing something is just to improve it, get the most potential out of it, but not change the song entirely. It's not making a remix or an edit or something. It's trying to stay true to the original, but just get more out of it. So, we won't need this and this. The rough mix can be muted. Zoom a little out. The thing I personally like to take care of first are the drums. So mainly this section right here. We got a sub kick. That I personally, to be honest, absolutely don't like. It just sounds very muddy, and there is another kick called top kick, which covers the same frequencies. Usually a top kick should just cover the top part. It has the click on top, but it also has the sub. But the sub of the top kick is actually nicer than the sub of the actual sub kick. So I think here I might just first of all mute the sub kick and not use it. For the snares, we got 3 layers. I like the second layer, it has this tone to it. The third layer I absolutely don't like, so I will try to change the balance of those 3 into something that actually works. Maybe also getting rid of one, maybe even going so far to just using 1 instead of 3, but this really depends. Adding a tiny bit of reverb. My reverb bus number 5 is like a special one, the Valhalla Vintage Verb with my setting for claps, snares and everything. Adding a tiny bit of reverb onto all of them. And the one that I want to be more in focus, less reverb, the ones that I don't like that much, pushing them a little bit more to the back. And while doing all of this, adjusting the volumes a tiny bit, I increased the volume of the kick actually, because it's now just the one kick. And next up, like a rough EQing, usually getting rid of the low frequencies for the kick. It's everything below 30 Hertz and a quite steep cut. Because you won't be able to hear it anyways on most speakers, so it's not really necessary. Quick EQing on the snares as well, just making sure that there's nothing on the low end. Reducing a tiny bit at 830 Hertz. I think it's like too much sticking out of the mix, so I'm lowering it just a tiny bit. Next up would be to try out to make some of the snares wide, just to have the bigger stereo field. I didn't EQ yet the middle one that I actually like the most, so let's solo it. Yeah, it also has like sub frequencies we absolutely don't need. And here I'm boosting a tiny bit between 5K and 10K because I want to have like a little bit of this air, but not the really top end. And this way also push the reverb a little bit out without getting the transient of the snare sound too much out of the mix. So just a subtle change. Next up, a delay, the sample delay by Logic. Just delaying one of the 2 channels to make the snare wide. And you might be able now to hear that it also shifts it to one side more, so you have to correct it with the pan. Next up, actually, since there's so few drum elements in the drop, let me double check that I didn't miss anything, because so far it's just like kick, snare. And we'll just continue with the next part, the bass lines. So we got in here a sub bass line that is very, very low. It also looks like it was cutted heavily. So I think I will leave it on for the moment and check out the other basses. There's like a sub one or another sub one. So I can already tell they're so similar, so I might actually not need the first one. I will mute it for now and check the growl bass. And the second growl bass. They're actually layered quite nicely. They go well together. You have the very bottom part covered, like the top low frequencies with the grid, and the second growl bass covers like up to the very high frequencies, everything, which is really good and solid to do for a future bass track. You need to layer it just to make it thick and big. But let's try and EQ all of them a little. Again, making sure to cut the low end at the right spot, and yeah, maybe shaping a little bit with the EQ, maybe a bit of compression, sidechain compression. So the sub has like a click to it. Sometimes I leave it in there because I like it when it has that click, the little attack, but here I might just get rid of it by cutting the top frequencies, because we still have like the growl bass on top of it. Here, just making sure to cut the low end so that the low end that is of the bass that is underneath goes well and kind of stops at the point where the other bass kind of starts. So really layering them on top of each other, making sure that not too many frequencies overlap, because then at the points where they overlap, then there's just too much bass. I also think this bass could need a little tiny boost. Although I will leave it for now because there's still one bass above it. Reverb, not necessary on a bass. Distortion, it's already distorted. That would be usually what I would try out next. So on top, the next bass. This one needs to be cutted quite heavily because it's sitting so far on top. Now let's add the kick to it and get the balance right between the drum elements and the basses. They're all a tiny bit too loud for now. Adding one of my own sidechain presets and selecting the sidechain source, which is the kick. So that would be heavily sidechained, which also sounds kind of cool if that's what you're going for. I don't think I have to explain sidechaining again, but whenever the kick is hitting, the bass gets lowered. You can see it on the graph view of the Logic compressor. Just gives it a little bit more room. And let's maybe try out one of the main elements here. I think the growl bass is a little bit too much like sticking out and growling too much, so I just lower it a tiny bit. So definitely at this point, I think the sub bass, the additional one, is not needed, deleting it. Now, next up, before I go into the details, I just want to do like a rough mix, just getting the levels right, no EQ, no reverb, nothing else on the other elements, just to like have the rough balance there. And then my take is usually to just listen to it, try to find the weakest element, go into it and improve it as much as I can, and repeat that so often until you have a song where you don't even know what to improve anymore. And that's basically when you're done with the mixing. So let me get all of those levels, like a rough level mixing of it. And basically all I did for the past 15 minutes was low cutting everything, doing the right low cut at the right point, getting rid of the muddy low end that isn't needed. This way freeing up a lot of space, and then just getting the levels right. Just the fader up or down and low cuts. That's all I did. No reverb so far, except for the clap and no for the snare. No compression, no multiband compression, no resonating EQing, no fancy EQing, nothing like that. It's just volumes and low cuts. So let's compare the two. My version sounds a little awkward because there's no reverb. It's very upfront, especially the vocals. But I think the low end sounds a lot punchier. The kick goes through a lot better, goes better with the bass. The synths sit a little bit better in there. But I think the main problem will be trying to get the vocals to shine within all of those synthesizers. There's maybe a little bit too much, so I will have to carve out some space for the vocals, but that's all for tomorrow. Also the compression of the vocals, they still have way too much dynamic reverb for the vocals and everything else, but I think like for the first hour or so, it's pretty good. That's the difference so far. I hope you liked it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will now just for the rest of the day take care of my next upcoming single. I finally got vocals by someone very talented from the US. It's going a tiny bit into another direction, but I don't want to give away too much. It will be quite exciting. I really love the vocals and I can't wait to finish that song. So yeah, see you tomorrow again, trying to fix the rest, reverb on the vocals, compression, some other professor shit, and then a tiny bit of mastering.